Welcome to Transforming Work with Sophie Wade, exploring the future of work. Find out what's going on, disruptions, evolutions, opportunities, challenges, and interventions in our multi-generational distributed organizations. With a new tech and talent focus, discover what you need to know to stay upskilled and relevant and ensure your business keeps its competitive edge. Sophie investigates the promise and reality of the future of work now and as we look ahead. She interviews people who are changing work experiences and practices and shares how we can each transition smoothly and successfully to effective and more productive new ways of working.
Hi, this episode is about onboarding. Onboarding new hires across our distributed work landscapes, updating the process for modern work. With CEOs focused on increasing productivity, we need new team members integrated and starting to contribute quickly. With new focus on how we work and adapting for our new environments, we can update and upgrade this previously undervalued but critical step. Prior to the pandemic, in the first 90 days, 91% of new hires considered quitting, and almost a third did. When does onboarding start at your company? Day one on the job or before? What emphasis is there on the corporate culture, and how does the person assimilate? Has their manager allocated sufficient time to help them build key relationships across the business wherever people are working? Emphasizing and facilitating the critical initial welcome and ongoing introduction to your company and its culture is vital to realize recruiting investments and grow your business. Effective onboarding is about integrating new hires into the corporate community for long-term success. I'm delighted to be talking to George Bradt, founder and chair of PrimeGenesis, an executive onboarding and transition acceleration consultancy. George is also the author of the New Leaders 100-Day Action Plan, and author or co-author of 10 other books mostly focused on onboarding, leadership, and transition. Hi, George. How are you?
I'm terrific. Good to see you.
Very good to see you. And so much to get to on the critical subject of onboarding. Onboarding in many different environments these days. Starting at the beginning, you studied economics. Why so?
I did. I thought it gave me lots of options. College student, had no clue what I wanted to do, and it was probably something to do with business, and economics did it.
Having done economics, you then go into a CPG company. What was the thought process in the evolution then?
So I actually started in sales. So I thought I eventually wanted to get into marketing.
Okay.
And I started in sales for Unilever, Lever Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I was hired by the New York district sales manager for a sales position. And when I interviewed him, he said, we need people with street smarts. We don't need somebody with Harvard smarts. Why would I hire a Harvard guy to go out and sell soap?
Right.
And I said, well, yeah, if you're looking for somebody with street smarts, it's not me.
Okay.
But if you think there's an opportunity to approach things differently, then maybe give me a chance. And he goes, well, we don't have any positions. I said, yeah, but you will. And now you know me. And 2 weeks later, they had a position.
Why were you so determined to join Unilever in a sales position?
It wasn't so much Unilever. The advice I got getting out of college was if you're going to go into sales, make sure you have at least one category leader, because then people have to talk to you. And Unilever at that time had Whisk, which was the number one liquid detergent. So it was always my entry into the stores. They had to talk to me.
Very smart. How well did you sell Whisk?
Well, so I did approach it differently. So I was selling to a lot of smaller stores. And I went in and we were shipping them direct. And I realized this was just a bad idea for them because they were taking too much of our product and it was too much of their space. So I went out and found all the wholesalers servicing all the stores. And I trained the wholesalers' salespeople. So as a salesman, I essentially had 200 people running around northern New Jersey selling my product for me. And guess what? They sold a lot.
And I'm sure that guy was like, he did do it differently. So then you do an MBA, you're learning marketing with finance, and then you go to P&G. Why was that the right next step? Or rather, what category leader did they have that you then wanted to go for in a brand manager role?
At the time, Procter and Gamble was the academy company for marketing. So they did marketing better than anybody else. And they had a whole bunch of category leaders. And I thought it was going to be the best marketing training I could get. So I actually, Unilever, I took a leave of absence from Lever Brothers and went back there over the summer, worked in marketing. They offered me a job at the end of the summer and said, put this in your pocket, see if you can find a better job. And then when I got the job offer from Procter, I went in to meet with the vice president of marketing, told him I was about to accept a job with Procter and Gamble. And he said, you've obviously made up your mind. I'm not going to try to change your mind. Go, do well, and know that if things don't work out, we're never more than a phone call away.
Nice.
Is that a nice way to leave a company?
That's a great way to leave a company. George, you're in your 20s still at this point. Your first job and your second job, you've been so thoughtful and deliberate and purposeful about it. That's unusual. How did you get to that point?
I have no idea. It seemed like the right thing, and I got good advice from people. But there was definitely a plan.
And even though at that time you were not focused on onboarding at all, I'm curious as to what difference, if any, do you remember between how you were brought on board to Unilever versus Procter and Gamble?
So I'll tell you two stories from Unilever and then one from Procter and Gamble. So Unilever, my onboarding was all done by my boss, who was really a great salesman and actually a great manager, Jim Phillip, who loved him, still love him. And it was one-on-one training. He was teaching me how to sell, and he did great. So it was, I was selling day 2, and immediate results and immediate learning. When I took over, I got promoted a couple of times, and I ended up taking over his sales unit.
Okay.
And I realized I couldn't outsell this guy because he was a better salesman than me. So I decided I had to outmanage him. Oh. And I had 5 key accounts, and I took 4 of them and gave one to each of my top 4 salespeople. And with them, I did a 6-month training program. So the first month they came with me to the accounts, headquarter accounts, and didn't open their mouths. They just sat there and watched. Okay. And the second month, I let them prepare the presentations in advance, which they gave to me. And I gave their presentation, taking full credit for it, while they sat there and didn't open their mouth. Okay. The next month, I let them give the presentation, but not answer any questions. Next month, I let them give the presentation and answer questions with me in the room. The next month, they came, took me through the presentation. We gamed the questions. They went into the meeting while I waited outside, and then they came out and told me what happened. The next month, this is 6 months in, I took a vacation. I went to a sales meeting. I came back, and these turkeys were 150% of quota through 2 weeks of the month because they owned it. And I've never been able to go back from that. So I didn't know it at the time, but that was the way to onboard people into things. Give them the time, give them clarity of direction, give them the resources, and then eventually give them the authority they needed to do what they needed to do.
Amazing step-by-step process. Yeah.
So Procter and Gamble, on the other hand, it was all onboarding. We didn't know it at the time, but they had this massive training program, and they took, it was a class of brand assistants, brand new marketing people, and we went through the same training programs and the same stuff, and they onboarded all of us and pretty much brainwashed us. I mean, we just, there was a 1-page memo, and it was really a 1-page memo, and every 1-page memo had the same outline. And I mean, the discipline. I did a market share report, and my boss was out, or my boss's boss was out, and I took it into my boss's boss because I printed it and gave it to him, and he takes one look at it and goes, "You stapled it at an angle. We don't staple things at an angle here. We staple them this way." I mean, he didn't care about the words. He didn't care about this. Like, redo it. You stapled it wrong. Discipline.
That's one word for it. So very, very rigorous and specific, and obviously effective.
Yeah.
You stayed there 6 years.
I did.
What were you looking to learn? What were you learning in that progression, and how did your job change over time? And then at the end of that 6 years, then why did you make the change that you did?
So there are 2 breaks. There's a break at 5 years where in general, you become a brand manager, and then another break at 10 years and 8 months. And because at 10 years and 8 months, a whole bunch of stuff vests. So you either leave at 5 years,
Okay.
or 10 years and 8 months, or you never leave.
Got it.
And I was really happy. I mean, really happy. We were having a great time, and I kind of thought I was going to be there forever. And they decided to merge my brand with another brand. So I helped everybody on my team, all the people working for me, get different jobs within Procter and Gamble. I was waiting for my assignment. And a headhunter called me and said, "Hey, we got this opportunity." And I said, "Well, I'm not interested." They said, "Would you at least meet the general manager?" So I said, "Great, but I won't leave LaGuardia Airport." So I flew from Cincinnati to LaGuardia, met the guy in the airport, flew back. It was just a morning. Liked the guy a lot. So they invited me for a second interview. Then they're inviting me back for the third interviews. And Procter offered me the job running 4 different brands in Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. And I said, "Great, I accept." They said, "You can't accept." I said, "What do you mean? You just offered me the job. I want to do it."
Okay.
And they said, "No, you have to go over and meet the general manager, and you have to go with your wife, and you just have to make sure you're going to feel good about the country before you accept." I said, "Great, I'll leave tomorrow morning." And I got on a plane the next morning, and I flew to New York for my last interviews.
Okay.
And those guys offered me the job. And I said, "Well, I can't accept because my wife is literally on a plane for us to fly over to Stockholm to check out this job. And, I can't go if I've accepted the job." He goes, "Well, do I need to keep looking for a marketing director?" I said, "No, but I'm not accepting it." We flew over to Paris to get into the time zone for a day. And I got a call from another headhunter. I said, "How did you find me?" He said, "I'm in the search business." And it was an old boss who'd gone over to another company to be CEO. And they made me a preemptive job offer to come in as head of marketing for that company. So then we went to Sweden, and we found a house. We enrolled the kids in school, met my boss, who was great. And then my wife and I sat down and said, "What do we want to do?" Because we literally had 3 job offers. And we realized if we stayed with Procter, if we stayed with Procter, we were going to stay forever. And the wild company was too risky. But the other job offer was a small company, Polio, which was part of Kraft General Foods.
Right.
And I said, if I like small companies, I stay small companies. If I like big companies, I let them transfer me to the big company. And I decided that job created options.
Interesting. So then what was the difference for you then going into a much smaller company? All your working experience at that point, which is 11 years, is in mega companies. You went to Disney and Coca-Cola after that. So obviously a large company thing works for you.
It was internet. It was coming out of Coke. This was 2000. The internet was booming, and I'd kind of missed it because I'd been in Asia for 6 years.
Right.
Which is a stupid reason to miss it because it was happening there. But I was, very much focused on Coca-Cola, and I wasn't paying attention to the internet. And I realized the world was changing. I needed to learn how to do that.
So going to Disney, you're doing marketing and sales in Disney, and then at Coca-Cola, you're deputy manager, regional manager. That's where the genesis of the onboarding idea arises for you. What was the experience that you had that caused you to focus in this particular area?
Oh, I got really pissed off.
Okay.
We brought in a new vice president of global brands, and he cost us a fortune. We had to pay the executive recruiter. We had to pay him a signing bonus. We had to buy out his stock options. Okay. We had to relocate him and his family and his dog and his wine from North Carolina to Japan. And after hundreds of thousands of dollars and months, the guy walks in and is greeted with, "Oh, hi, you're here. We're so excited to see you. Yes, wait. We got to get you an office, and you'll need a computer, and we got to get you Meishi business cards." Yeah, I can see your face.
Oh, my goodness.
My reaction was, we're the Coca-Cola company. We should be better at this. I mean, I'd seen it done in big companies. I'd seen it done in smaller companies.
Right.
I'd done it. I was like, whatever we're doing here is wrong. And I got mad. And I pulled 2 people together and I said, we're going to figure this out. And we created a whole thing. And we hired another vice president about a month later. And she walked in. We had her office ready. We had her name on the door. We had her computer ready. We had computer passwords. We had flowers in our office. We had orientation books. We had orientation sessions set. We had meetings set. We had a plan for her. And guess what? It worked better. And I saw those two things and I said, there's something here.
At the same time, I still would have thought that Coca-Cola, having hired so many thousands of people over the last 50 years, would have a process that was at least running smoothly? No?
So Coca-Cola at the time had a bunch of things that didn't work. Do you know what a copy strategy is?
Copy strategy? No.
Copy. So when you do advertising, there's an advertising strategy or a copy strategy.
Okay.
So there's the brand positioning, there's the copy strategy, which says, okay, we're going to do this advertising and it's going to communicate this benefit or promise. And we're going to support it with these points. And here's the character of the brand. It was a pretty basic thing. So at all my rigor at Procter and Gamble, we were trained that every advertising meeting or copy meeting started with somebody literally putting the strategy on the table and saying, this is the strategy. Now we're going to show you advertising that communicates that strategy. Okay? Got the idea?
Yep.
So I went to, my first job at Coke was head of marketing for the UK. And I'd been there, I don't know, a couple of days. And we're in an advertising meeting. And the agency comes in and I said, great, can I see the copy strategy? I just got blank looks. Where's the copy strategy? There was no copy strategy. Now, so I don't mean there was no copy strategy in the room. I don't mean there was no copy strategy in the UK. Brand Coca-Cola in 1994 did not have a copy strategy. So forget onboarding.
Okay.
You know, we're like the world's largest advertiser at that point, and we don't have a copy strategy. It's just like, yeah, this works, this doesn't work. It's like, no. The point was there were a lot of things that one would assume Coke had that we didn't have.
Okay, so you then spend 6 years at Coca-Cola. You've done all the sales and marketing, brand strategy, running divisions. Why then such a huge focus on onboarding?
Well, it wasn't then. It was something I was doing. I mean, I was running the region, the division, so I did it, maybe 2% of my time.
Right.
When I went to JD Power, I did it there because we were building a team, and so then I had people do it. Where I got really serious about it was when I left JD Power.
Okay.
So JD Power, I came in to run a division, which we did great stuff. You've seen the numbers, but we spun it off as a separate company. And when that was done, I said, I don't have to do this anymore. And I said, there is this need for onboarding or whatever it was. It still exists, and I thought I could build a business around it. So that was when I shifted. And so coming out of JD Power, I had this great general management experience, sales, marketing, finance. I look really good on paper. and I decided if I was going to start a business, I wanted to be the best in the world at something. And I decided there was an unmet need that I could figure out how to fix.
Oh, I love it when you set the bar so low on yourself. So let's dig into onboarding.
Let's start with the problem and the screaming one critical idea.
Okay.
And then we can go into the steps.
How are you approaching it for somebody coming into a company? What is the key thing that they need to learn to understand what the company is all about?
This is straight out of Daniel Kahneman.
Okay.
Daniel Kahneman is the psychologist who won a Nobel Prize in economics because he and his partner figured out this bias stuff. So here's the issue. Here's the question. You're driving from Ethiopia to Kenya. You've crossed the border. You see a sign. It says, "Welcome to Kenya." What must you do? You know the answer. I know you know the answer. What's the answer?
You have to change the side of the road you're driving on.
Absolutely. And most people don't know that. You're very rare to know that because in Ethiopia, you drive on the right. In Kenya, they drive on the left. And for most people, there's no way in the world they should know that. And their instinct is to keep doing what made them successful. And if they don't switch sides of the road, they're going to have a head-on collision. Here's the problem. Every company drives on different sides of the road in different ways. And this is Kahneman's, Kahneman had all these biases. And this is the bias of when you go to a new company, your instincts are wrong.
Okay.
Not awful little.
Yeah. Not
potentially issues. They're wrong. Because the things that made you successful before are going to lead you to have a whole series of head-on collisions. And that's the screaming problem. And so if I had to get our screaming insight, and this is 25 years plus working on this, the one most important idea is you have to converge into an organization or a team before you try to evolve it. You have to become part of the team and evolve it from the inside. And what that means is the people that walk, and we've all seen this, your listeners we've all been to this movie.
Right.
New leader walks in, first day, she stands up and says, "Hi, let me tell you about me, and let me tell you about my vision for the company and where we're going. This is the direction, follow me." And everybody hates her immediately because the minute she does that, she says, "I don't care what you think. I don't care about you. I'm your savior. I'm the answer." And everybody goes, "No, wrong."
Yeah.
And then nobody wants to help her. And nobody's going to show her where things are. Nobody's going to teach her the unwritten rules of the road in this company. And she is going to offend everybody and trip over everything. And so that's our fundamental idea. And then coming out of that, what we've done is, out of that one main idea, we've got 4 ideas. First one is get a head start. The second one is manage your message. The third one is build your team. And then the fourth one is sustain momentum. And I'm happy to dig into them if you want. But what we do is we've pulled it together into these 100-day plans. And the 100-day plan idea, we talk about 100-day plans. Michael Watkins talks about 90 days. Different people talk about different. The time's not the point. Yeah. The point is the structure. The point is sitting down before you start getting a head start and creating a plan. And creating a plan with structure, which you're never going to follow. But if you have a plan, then you know when you're varying and you know what you're doing and you won't miss some of the big steps.
Okay.
So the first step is, have a plan. And then in that plan, there are things that we suggest people do before day one. Onboarding doesn't start day one. It starts with your first contact with the organization. So let's imagine I'm coming to work for a company you work for. Doesn't matter what it is. And I'm coming in as your boss, which is your worst nightmare. You don't want me as a boss.
I don't? Okay. All right.
No, you don't.
How do I know that?
You don't. But
okay.
But in this particular case, you know it because you wanted the job.
Oh, yes.
You were the
Definitely
lead internal
don't want
candidate.
You okay. Yep.
No. So I joined the company, and first day I sign in, find my computer in my office, and fill out all the HR forms. And the second day I go to a management meeting because I'm management and you're not, because I got the job and you didn't. And then the third day I come by your office and I say, "Listen, let's have lunch because, I've heard good things about you. I want to get to know you." How are you feeling about me at that point?
Suspicious and resentful.
Yeah, right. You think? So contrast that, if you would, with the day after I'm announced. I call you up and I say, "Listen, Sophie, I know you heard about the announcement. I also know you were the lead internal candidate for this job. And they've told me amazing things about you. And it really seems like it is in the organization's best interest and your best interest and my best interest for us to get to know each other before I start. It's so important to me. I don't start for 3 weeks, but I will meet you anywhere in the world, anytime you want, so we can just spend some time and get to know each other. How are you feeling about me now?
Surprised, still a little suspicious, but I'm feeling more open that we can work together.
Right? I mean, the difference between showing up day 3 with you resentful and suspicious,
yep,
and you kind of going, okay, maybe. You gave me the benefit of a doubt.
Yep.
And so starting to build some relationships before day 1, connecting with individuals, it's part of converging. And then on day 1, I'm working with somebody who's 2 weeks into being a CEO, and before day 1, we did all the stuff before that. And before day 1, she goes, okay, what are the 3 things I have to remember day 1? I said, really simple: relationships, relationships, and relationships. All that matters is relationships. Any question, any meeting, the answer to any question is you're caring about building relationships.
Now, let's just say I'm a leader, I'm onboarding a key new person in my team. How do I best onboard them to make sure that this is going to be successful, merging them into my team?
So you flipped it on me, which is absolutely fine. So if it's still converge before you evolve. And what you have to do is you have to help these people converge before they try to evolve their function. And if the 4 ideas for a leader onboarding themselves are get a head start, manage the message, build the team, build and sustain momentum. If you're onboarding somebody else, the key words are think about alignment, acquiring, accommodating, assimilating, and accelerating. And let me tell you what those mean.
Okay.
If I were king of the world, and there were times where I was king of my own world, I would never let anybody even start to recruit a new hire until all the key people were aligned around what that new hire was going to do.
Oh.
So people fail in new roles generally because of poor fit, a poor ability to deliver, or a poor ability to adjust to something down the road, to adjust to change down the road.
Okay.
Fit is cultural fit. And delivery, a lot of times there's a role risk. And the role risk is somebody doesn't understand the role. It's never the boss. The person coming in and their boss always understand the role. The role risk is generally with a peer, where there's a new role that was carved out of somebody else's role.
Right.
And that person hasn't quite realized that they have to let go. So the first thing you do is you get everyone aligned around the role. Why are we hiring this person? What are they going to do? What are they not going to do? What's everybody else going to do? So that's before you even start recruiting.
Oh, fascinating.
Then the way you acquire people is part of onboarding. And of course you're asking them questions. Of course you're challenging them. But you can't be one company and do pressure interviews and then say, oh, but we're really a nice, sweet company. No, you have to, be do say. You have to be who you are.
Right.
And then one of my favorite moments, and I've done well. I've managed to persuade a lot of people to do a lot of things. I really have a hard time persuading people to do this, even though it makes so much sense. So imagine you're hiring somebody, and you've got the people aligned, and the recruiters did whatever, and you went through the interviews, and you've done the due diligence, and you're absolutely ready to make them a job offer. And you take them out to lunch, and you make the job offer, and they say yes. What do you do next? And the answer is not switch sides of the roads. But what do you do next? They say yes. What are the next words out of your mouth?
When can you start?
Sure. It's fine. So I suggest the next words out of your mouth should be so excited, but not prepared to accept your acceptance yet. Now that I've offered you the job, before you accept, want you to do a real due diligence. I want you to ask the questions now that you couldn't ask while you were still interviewing. Happy to let you read any of our documents. Happy to open the financials.
Right.
Happy to let you talk to the person that had your job before. Happy to have you talk to customers, suppliers. Now happy to have you talk to the people who are going to be working for you. Didn't want you to do that before because that would have been a really screwy meeting.
Right.
Because if they were interviewing you to be their boss, who's in charge, who's got the power, bad idea. But now you can talk to them and do a real due diligence. And take the weekend, take a week, take 2 weeks, whatever it is, depending upon the level of the job. But really go do a due diligence before you say yes. I suggest there are only 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 is you go off whoever it is, the person goes off and does their due diligence and comes back and says, oh my gosh, thank you. This is wrong. I mean, I'm the wrong person for you. What an amazing company, but I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's a win. Because anything they could have figured out in a week of due diligence, they were going to figure out in the first month on the job.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they quit, or worse, if they don't quit, if they're unhappy,
right,
you're stuck with them. Whereas if they come back after a week and say no, you can go back to the second choice candidate who never knows they were second choice.
Critical. Yep.
Scenario 2 is they do the due diligence and come back and go, oh my gosh, thank you. This is fabulous. Think about, you led into this section with relationships. Think about the relationship I as a boss am establishing with the person that's working for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep.
In our first interaction, instead of trying to close the sale, I was coming around to their side of the table saying, before we do anything, let me make sure it's right for you.
Yeah.
What a nice way to start a relationship.
Fantastic. And the transparency that I want you to know the company well that you're coming into and see our dirty laundry, because that's really critical for you to accept that too. Love that.
So that's acquire. So I'm not done here. So all we've done is align and acquire. Then you got to accommodate, which is, I can do the rest of these really simply. Accommodate is make sure they can do work. This is back to Matt in Japan. Make sure they're going to have an office and a computer on day one.
Okay.
Unbelievable how many companies don't do that. People show up and say, oh, you're here. Yeah, we need to get your computer. That one nameless company had a whole system for getting computers for directors and below and couldn't figure it out for vice presidents because vice presidents and up, new vice presidents and up, got to pick their executive assistant. And then their executive assistant would order them the computer. So by definition, there was no way they were having a computer day one. It's like, guys, we have a systematic problem here. We fixed that. Accommodate is make sure they can do work.
Yep.
And then you have to help them assimilate. And assimilate is, everybody hates meetings. Unless you're new, because that's where you meet people.
Sure.
And everybody hates screwy projects unless you're new, because that's how you meet people.
Right.
And then there are all these behind the scenes networks. There's no way for a new person to figure that out unless somebody actively says, you need to get involved in, at Coke, one of the vice presidents of marketing and the CEO always seemed to be aligned. They'd come to meetings, they always fought together, and we couldn't figure it out until we realized they went fishing together every Sunday. If you wanted to be in the inn, you needed to learn how to fish. Forget fish where the fish are. You fish where the CEO is. So assimilate is into the behind the scenes networks. Right. And then you help them accelerate. And this goes back to the 100 days. Onboarding is not the first day. It's not the orientation. It's not the first week. It's not the first month. It's not the first 90 days or the first 100 days. You're accelerating up to it's like a shark. You're accelerating until you stop swimming. And so people need so much more help and support for so much longer than anybody believes. And if you really want these people to be successful, make sure everybody's aligned. Acquire them in the way that's going to work going forward. Accommodate them so that they can do work. Assimilate them so they can work with others, and then stick with it and help them accelerate.
Amazing steps. And many of those I know that you crafted and refined prior to so much remote working. There obviously was flexibility and there was remote working before the pandemic. But I know that onboarding was highlighted during the pandemic because so many people needed to be onboarded remotely. And of course, now with hybrid, there is more possibility to bring people in or have a slightly different cadence of where they're working during that onboarding period. How have some of those steps changed, or how you weight them, or how you help companies, and both companies bring people on, but also new leaders going into companies with the new dynamics of work? What are the different things that people need to be prioritizing or thinking a little bit more carefully about, perhaps, or differently because of new location factors as well?
So ultimately, it's all culture.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, the first 4 editions of the New Leaders 100 Day Action Plan, we said culture was important.
Mm-hmm.
We changed our mind in the 5th edition. We no longer say culture is important.
Okay.
Now we say it's the only thing that matters.
Okay. All right.
And culture is the way people behave, the way they relate, their attitudes, their values, the environment. What's different with remote work is how deliberate you have to be about relationships. Mm-hmm. If people are, Apple, when Steve Jobs was designing Apple's headquarters, new headquarters, he put all the bathrooms in the central area to force everybody to walk to the central area to bump into each other.
Right.
Now people's bathrooms are in their houses. They're not bumping into each other. You cannot expect people to naturally interact with each other.
Right.
And even when they do, I'm really, really learning to hate these virtual meetings. And what I really hate is when there's part of the people live and part of the people virtual, because the virtual people, they're second-class citizens.
Right.
The technology is almost always a problem, but B, they miss the nuances of the meeting. They can't hear the side conversations. And what they really miss is they miss the conversations on the breaks, and they miss the conversation walking into the room. Hey, what's this meeting? What's this meeting about? What are we going to do? Or the conversation coming out of the room. What did you hear? One of my partners, Susie Pinella, tells a story of being in a meeting, and during every break, all the decisions changed. It was her and 10 guys. And so after the second break, she picked up a chair and she took it in the men's room and put it down in the middle of the men's room. And they said, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Well, this seems to be where all the decisions are made. You have 2 choices."
Oh, yeah, I love awesome. Her.
Oh, yeah. You say you have 2 choices. Either you agree not to do that or I'm staying. If people are virtual, they can't take their chair into the bathroom. So what you've got to do, and all those side conversations, the people, stopping by your office or seeing you at the coffee machine, say, "Hey, can I get your idea on this? Or what do you think about this? Or what's going on here?" That doesn't happen. And so if you're onboarding somebody who's working remotely, you've got to be incredibly deliberate and invest so much time in building the relationships. This is, the one-on-one Zoom or Teams or whatever platform.
Yep.
You can do a lot with videos if they're one-on-one, but you got to do it deliberately. Yep. You can't say, "Hey, look, join me for a cup of coffee." It's like, join me for a Zoom meeting. And so I may be oversimplifying. I'm oversimplifying a ridiculously complicated subject. You know about my Forbes article on this last year?
Oh, you told me that there were a few people who weren't too happy.
Oh my gosh. So I did an article on why companies with remote work are heading towards the tragedy of the commons. And people can go read it, but the fundamental idea is it's kind of almost always in any individual's best interest to work remote because they save the commute, it's more flexible, work-life balance, all sorts of good stuff. And if everybody does it, the company has no culture.
I completely disagree with you there, but okay.
Well, hello. And the point is, I got more comments on that article than on any other article I'd ever written. There were literally hundreds of comments, and they all agreed with you. They all said, "You're an old guy, you're a boomer, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course we can build a virtual culture."
I guess I'm surprised at you when I am certain that you have all kinds of relationships. In fact, we have developed some kind of relationship, a couple of conversations that we've had without ever having been in the same room together. we have some sense of values and history and some common ground, and the essence of a culture in between just us as a team of two, that it seems unusual for someone with such experience to say that there's no culture because you're just not in person.
So on my Forbes article, it's much more important for me to be provocative than right. and you know you're right on this one. And there's no but. You're right. To do that, though, people have to be very deliberate about it. Mm-hmm. It won't happen. So there are companies that are 100% virtual. They get it.
Yeah.
And they do meetups and they do things. Sure. And they've applied the discipline and the rigor to building a virtual culture. The nightmare is the hybrid company.
Is the hybrid, yeah. Particularly because of those meetings where you have a bunch of people in person and you have the two-tier system. Yeah, for sure. That is the most problematic.
Yeah. So the point was not, oh my gosh, you can't do it. The point was you're going to have to be really deliberate about it. So if you're going to be deliberate about in a hybrid, in a virtual world, you have to be deliberate about building the culture. And the screaming critical thing is relationships.
And how do you advise people best do that? We know that there are some very prominent people who have said, we have an in-office culture. How do you help them? Are there key elements which wrap into the onboarding essence to help them adapt their culture, because it is everything, to understand how the culture needs to adapt for these new ways of working? Because you're not going to help them on board or be bringing people on effectively if they haven't actually worked this out, right?
Right. And it starts, so yes, it starts with figuring out what are the key elements of relationships within your office culture. Where relationships form, because they're not formed in big meetings where one person's presenting to somebody else. It's formed in the, bumping each other in the elevator, good morning, the morning cup of coffee. It's the breaks between meetings. It's the going into the meeting, the coming out of the meeting. It's the side meetings. It's the, hey, Jack, I got this thing, can you over 5 minutes? And it's saying, okay, how do I achieve those same goals, those same objectives with people that aren't in the office? Is there, do you do virtual office hours? Where it's like, listen, I'm going to be in this Teams room from 8 to 8:30 in the morning. Drop by if you got a question.
And so now when you're going into companies, are you then doing a diagnosis, which is trying to understand what some of their cultural rituals are, as well as obviously their values?
Well, so the actual answer to your question is no.
Okay.
We don't do that. We don't do that because we can't possibly get up to speed on the culture fast enough to be effective.
Oh, okay.
So we cheat. We always cheat.
Oh, okay.
So when we're helping a leader on board into an organization, it's a three-legged stool. We know the process. We provide the discipline, the structure, sometimes leverage, sometimes expert advice. There's the leader who's in charge. Right. And there's somebody from the organization who understands the culture. They have to be part of the conversations. They have to be buddy with the new leader. They have to show them which side of the road to drive on, where the meetings are, what matters, how things work. We can't do it. So we get somebody else to do it.
That makes total sense. And that person also needs to understand enough about the culture, where it is now and where it may be evolving to in order to be more effective. Because aren't you still going to have an issue if the culture isn't well set up to deal with the hybrid model that most companies in the US have?
Sure, but converge and evolve is sequential.
Okay.
First, you have to join, you have to meet the team, meet the culture where it is now.
Yeah. Right.
And then one of our other big insights is, we stole this from Brian Smith, the tell, sell, test, consult, co-create, 5 ways to persuade somebody to do something. Tells the traffic policeman on the corner, go right. You're not arguing with the policeman going right. Sell is, listen, I really want you to do this. I'm going to persuade you. You're going to be happy to be persuaded. Test is, what do you think? Should we go this way or that way? I don't care. Consult is, here's my current best thinking. Help me evolve it. And co-create is blank page. And so on a future culture, we kind of almost always say, we do a diagnostic, we get the team to say, where are we now? And given where we've said we wanted to go to, what is our ideal culture in the future? Mm-hmm. And culture change takes forever. Yeah. So which 1, 2, or 3 dimensions are we going to start evolving first? Right. The team has to co-create it, own it, and then the leader can help the team move forward. If the leader says, here's what the culture needs to be, they will fail. And if Drucker, wasn't actually Drucker, but it was Mark Fields, but they think Drucker said culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. So if it eats strategy for breakfast, it eats new leaders as a snack between meals.
Okay. What haven't I asked you that I should have done?
One question is why new leaders, bosses don't pay more attention to onboarding. Mm-hmm. It's so important. I'm 20, 25 years doing this. I have never, ever been able to get a line manager excited about onboarding. They think it's an HR function. They think it's a process. They think it's beneath them. They think somebody else should run it. But I've sure gotten leaders, bosses, whether they're senior executives or board members, excited about delivering better results faster. And I've got them to realize that if they're hiring this person and putting this person into a new role, they really don't want this person to fail. And if they can get them to move faster, that would be, if they can get them to converge and then evolve the team faster, that's in everybody's best interest. And then they get excited about onboarding. I mean, it's the old, nobody ever wakes up in the morning saying, I need a 3-inch drill bit.
No.
They say, I need to hang a picture.
Yeah.
And to do that, I need to drill a hole. Now I need the drill bit.
Right.
Onboarding's the drill bit.
Got it. In a more complex world where culture is everything, and we are still very much in a period of transformation, a period of change. For a company that has a hybrid model, they recognize that onboarding is not where it needs to be. What are just a couple of things that people can do tomorrow to improve the situation?
At the risk of being Maslow running around the world looking for nails to hit, if you just got your new employees, new managers, new leaders, bosses to sit down with them as soon after they actually accept the job and as far in advance of day one, and help them co-create their own personal onboarding plan, whether it's 100 days or 90 days or whatever. Uh-huh. But if the two of them put together a personal onboarding plan with a particular emphasis on the deliberate steps to understand the culture and build relationships, it's going to solve a whole lot of problems.
It sounds so much easier than it is. George, thank you so much for your time and your insights and all the learnings and knowledge that you've accumulated and how you put that into practice in some very thoughtful ways with some really great steps and sound bites. So really, really appreciate some very practical takeaways as well as the strategic thinking. It's so interesting how you are so focused on culture. How you articulate that is really helpful at a time where, culture is everything. And you really brought that to the fore. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks again so much to George Bradt, founder and chair of PrimeGenesis. You can find out more about George on LinkedIn. Go to his company website, PrimeGenesis, PrimeGenesis.com, and take a look at his most recent book, The New Leader's 100-Day Action Plan. The list of all his other books can be found in the show notes. Immediate action tip. As soon as possible after someone accepts their new position, before day one on the job, get their manager to sit down with them to co-create the person's own personal onboarding plan particularly emphasizing culture and building relationships. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and like it. You could also write a quick review wherever you listen. For regular video updates, curated useful articles, research and information, follow me on LinkedIn and sign up for my Work in Progress newsletter there. Thanks for listening. Until next time.